My name is Dina, and I want to talk to you today about um, how to love when you're going through a really hard time, when you feel like everything is against you, or maybe you're being targeted, or you're being stalked by a lot of people. And there's when those things happen, there is a tremendous amount of um, group think. There's a specific name for it. It escapes me right now. But when people get together, the loudest one usually is the one that controls the group. Can be, right? There are some great leaders that can reverse that and change that. But when there's a group that there's no specific leader, it typically is the loudest one that kind of guides and gears that group wherever it's going to go. And usually those people are people that like to stir the trouble in somebody's life or other people's lives. They don't take responsibility for themselves or their actions. They just really enjoy causing chaos. And I hope that makes sense. You've probably encountered it. At least one person that is like that. Now, see, I built a career on dealing with a lot of people like that. In my career, I was a property manager, and most of my duties were dealing with people. Dealing with my members, dealing with my board of directors, guiding people, leading people, trying to help people, um, fixing problems. So everything was it was necessary to understand people, to interact with them, and to sometimes lead them, other times completely redirect them. And I think that career helped me be able to continue to love people because I understand them more. I understand that there are people out here that just really enjoy causing trouble. I've met them. They've just they've just shared with me that they enjoy it, and I don't know why. I didn't dive deep into that, but I do know that there's a lot of folks out here that are like that. And so when I was going through my all the trouble that I had, the not only the Bible lead me, love one another and do as I did, you'll do greater than I. But this verse here, I have it here on my phone. It's Matthew 5, verse 44. And when I saw this, I was so angry. I was really angry, and I didn't know where to where to put all of that emotion and what to do with it, because there wasn't just one person, there wasn't just one group, there wasn't somebody I could look at and say, you are the problem. So I had to figure it out. I had to take those emotions, process them, learn what was true and what was not true, and what was being said around me, about me. um, you know you cannot take all of it personally. You have to be able to determine and decipher whether or not something is true or not. But anyway, this verse really led me in those moments. In Matthew 5, verse 44, he writes, Jesus said, I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. And when you are going through a hard time, when you are being persecuted, when you are finding yourself, you don't have anywhere to turn, you don't know what to do, you don't know who to blame, you you feel like you've taken as much responsibility as you possibly can take, and you're not throwing shade on other people, you're just out here trying to live your life. You have to go back to this verse, because those that cause you problems are going to find themselves in the same situation that they caused for you. And that's the really terrible part, because what I was put through was really bad. And I do pray for my enemies sometimes, not as much as I used to. Things have let up some over the last year, but I did in the very beginning. I did. I used this verse to sort of keep me level-headed, and I allowed God to show me what it was that I needed to change based on whatever was coming my way, whatever the negativity was that I was absorbing. I had to, like I said, you have to decipher whether something that you're hearing and whatever's going on, you have to decipher if that's factual for you. Because if it's not, you got to let it go. You can't harbor all of that negative energy. You have to just set it aside. And so when I was really going through a hard time, it took a lot of processing, a lot of thinking, was this true for me? And is in this moment, is it something that I can do something about? Is it something that I have to apologize for? Is it something I have to fix within myself to get through this moment? Or is it something that doesn't pertain to me, and it's just merely somebody's projection of their own lives? And that's the most important part. You have to be able to discern whether when somebody's interacting with you and they become defensive, or they become ugly, or they're hurt, or they're angry. You have to decipher really quickly whether or not their interaction with you is something that comes from their lives specifically, that they are right in that moment having to process. Now, maybe they aren't processing it well, and most of the time people don't, but you have to be able to decipher whether their anger, their frustration, their ugliness, whether that's something that you have to own. And that's part of God's plan for all of us. We are trying to get to a higher level spiritually. And to do that, you have to own yourself. You have to own where you need to make amends. You just have to dig deep. You have to dig deep on the things that come to your life, and know that not all of it is something that you have to own. It's people's opinions. And so in processing that, you have to determine whether or not it's, like I said, if it's true for you. If not, you have to let it go, which can be difficult. You can replay it in your mind, but I think the strongest people are able to discern whether something's true coming from other people, and to be able to not let it take over your thoughts and take over your life, because that's where that anger comes from. Feeling like a victim, feeling angry, feeling rejected or lonely. Those kinds of things can cause a lot of frustration within your heart, a lot of anger within your mind, and it causes you to lash out. And so the way to get around that is to discern whether or not these things that are coming to you are true or not. If they're not true, you've got to be able to let it go. And I became pretty good at that. I did own a lot of things. Maybe some things I didn't even need to, but I did. Processing a lot during that period, because God wants us to do that. He is asking for us to atone for our sins, to change our behavior, to become like Him, and to so we can enter into heaven. And in order to do that, you have to go through these tough times. And a lot of people will talk about situations or other people being your mirror, and that is absolutely true. Maybe not every situation. I'm not versed on this whole spiritual thing on that, but I do know that it is something that I encountered, that a lot of the things that were coming to me were a mirror of myself. And when you see that, a lot of people typically will become defensive, typically will lash back at somebody, and typically will feel as if they are a victim. And I knew that if I started that behavior, and if I allowed that reaction to control my life, I was never going to grow. So I had to control my emotions. I had to control my feelings, and think with my heart. And I know that seems weird to say because maybe your heart doesn't have the capability to think, but it can lead you. So I read the Bible, I absorbed the information, and everywhere you read in the Bible, everywhere it says love one another, um, and don't persecute those who persecute you, and help one another. It's just basically the goodness that we're supposed to show up in a different on a different level, like to be good to people, to love people, to whether they are loving to us or not. And that's not easy. That is not easy at all. Um, but it's very important because the only way that we all get through all of this and come out on the other side, walking with God, is to use our heart as the center of our discernment in order to discern, one, whether something's true. Are you supposed to own whatever's being told to you, or can you let it go? And two, how can you interact with this person in a more relaxed, in a more loving manner? And then that doesn't mean you turn around and let them whip you and beat you and put you in chains. No. But it does mean that you have a level of you actually wind up showing up with a level of control that most people don't see anymore. It's like several times people will come to me in anger, and I will allow them to do that. I won't, years ago in my 20s, I'd have fought back and I'd have whatever, wouldn't have hit them most of the time, but I definitely would have, clapped back and took control of the situation verbally. But as I was going through all of this change and all of the being led by God and looking at the things in my life that I needed to look at and change it within myself, when people showed up in anger, I had to allow that in them. And so when I came in full control of my own emotions, they wind up feeling absolutely kind of silly because they're yelling and throwing a fit. And so they wind up changing their behavior because they're not getting the reactions that they thought that they were going to get. And I'll tell you, actually, my ex-husband was great with this. I was off the wall. I was a yeller. Just, I don't know how he ever dealt with me. But he was always the calm one. He was always the one that just was so level-headed. And most of the time, I remember telling my mom about this, and most of the time I was the one that felt like an idiot at the end of the day because he was so calm and he was so easy to get along with and so level-minded that my like higher level of energy and the yelling and the stress that was coming from me, he didn't absorb that. Well, at least I hope he didn't. But he didn't absorb that from me. He just held space for me. And that's what I would encourage you to do, is just hold space for people within your heart and allow them to be who they are. Not to hurt you and not to cause you pain. I'm not saying take that. There's a point where you can absorb so much, but when it becomes over the top, you have to take control of the situation. And maybe we can talk about that another time. But honestly, the best thing you can do when you are going through a hard time is to pray for those that are hurting you. And that helps to humble you a little bit and helps to keep you focused on your heart. I hope that helps. So until next time, keep healing.